Hey, today on Minute Man Preparedness, we're going to jump into a topic that could scare a lot of people, but there's no need to be scared. It's a good idea to be informed, but don't be scared. On the 28th of this month, some information was dropped by a intelligence firm, American intelligence firm, talking about the high likelihood of homeland terrorist attacks at hospitals in median population areas around the United States. We're going to jump into that information and try to fill you in on a little bit of it so you can stay more informed. I'm also going to tell you some areas where you can obtain some more of this information and likewise. So stay tuned and we're going to talk about it. Hey, so welcome back to Minute Man Preparedness. So like I stated in the opening there, we're going to jump into this information. So this information was dropped on March 18th of this year, and it originated from a company called, and I'm going to butcher the last part of this, but American Kintex, it's Kinetix. You can jump over to their X account. They post a lot of things daily. A lot of real good information, some open source stuff and other stuff that isn't open source that they put out there. It's really good information and I would highly suggest going over to them and checking them out on X. So real quick rundown of this company. It's a global operational services support firm founded in 2002 to support the global war on terror, GWOT. The leadership team is comprised of veterans, decorated U.S. CIA and JSOC, which is Joint Special Operations Command, personnel with decades of experience in austere, dynamic, and hostile environments. So this is the company itself that gathered this intel and put it out. They also state that they use privileges, discretion, and never disclose for whom they work. But you know, I have seen around here and there that they do some work with governmental entities, assisting in gathering intelligence. And if you go over to their X account, Sarah Adams, Superbad, she was a targeter for the CIA and did intel. She's on the Shawn Ryan Show a lot. She actually has posted on their X account, which adds, you know, some more credibility to it. So they posted this information on the 18th. So when that information was posted, the the American Hospital Association, the AHA, and Health-ISAC, ISAC, they saw the post, looked into it, and they went ahead and put out a threat bulletin to hospitals. Now, I have seen the bulletin, but it's on my phone, which is what I'm recording on. I was unable to find it on the online from my laptop here, and so I went to the AHA's webpage and found the bulletin and clicked on it, but it won't let you get to it unless you log in through like their employee portal or something like that. I went through a bunch of their bulletins online through image searching and was unable to find this bulletin. You may be able to find it somewhere. I did have it on my telephone, but I made some bullet points of the bulletin and the information it contained. So first off, we have to remember the tactic that terrorists utilize is fear. You know, they want everyone to be afraid. They want everyone to stay inside their home. You know, they want to disrupt your everyday life by making you afraid to go anywhere, to do anything. They want you to, you know, kind of hunker down, you know, so they can control you with fear. Now, do I go to concerts and big, huge events like that? No. One, I just don't care for that stuff. But two, it's just, you know, from a safety and security standpoint for myself and especially my family and friends, it's too much for one person to try to watch and pay attention to everything that's going on around us. It's just not something that interests me, and so something we don't do. But if that's something you enjoy doing, then, you know, do it. But use common sense, pay attention, situational awareness. I did a pretty good breakdown a few months back on my Instagram, Minuteman Preparedness, on situational awareness. I would highly suggest going over there, you know, follow me, please, and go down towards the bottom. You'll see it. It'll say situational awareness. Give that a good look through. That's a lot of information that I picked up throughout the years, throughout my career, and all the plethora of schools I went to, dealing with surveillance and, you know, all these different types of things, things that I picked up, I put in there. So go over there, give that a look. But when you go out to these big events, pay attention to what's going on around you. Look at the people, the vehicles, the event itself. You know, if there's protests or counter protests, just pay attention. But back to the main point here. So this was a threat to U.S. hospitals. It was posted March 18th, 2025. So they're stating that this is a highly credible threat from, we'll all know the beginning of this, and some of you will know the rest of it, ISIS, but it's a little secular group, ISIS-K. Apparently they have already actively planned out and coordinated a multi-city terrorist attack on hospitals in the United States within the next upcoming weeks or so. And ISIS-K, for those who don't know, is the Islamic State. I'm really going to butcher this one. Croatian province is Khorassan, not Croatian, but whatever that is, province. Not the best at that. That's where the ISIS-K group is. And I hadn't done a huge deep dive into the ISIS-K, but layman's terms from what I took, and if I'm wrong, someone correct me in the comments, but ISIS-K is kind of an offshoot group of the original ISIS, and it's different sects and groups that have kind of had that didn't like each other, but they started to form kind of a common bond, and, you know, with their viewpoints on things, and so they formed this ISIS-K group. You know, take that with a grain of salt. That's just kind of what I took from that. You know, like I said, I could be wrong. But anyways, so they posted that the method of this attack would be VBIDs. So that is so if you who don't know, that's a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, and then it would be followed by armed assaults and possible hostage taking. They stated that, and I've been paying attention to this information for the past few days. I've just now been able to get around to doing this video, but that the actual surveillance and planning of this has already happened. It's already taken place. It's done. Things are ready to go, apparently. And, you know, in my former career, I was an EDD handler, which is an explosives detection dog handler. So I dealt with explosive searches, you know, and when you don't know what you're looking for, and you know, say you're in the parking lot of a hospital, especially a mid-tier or large hospital that's servicing, you know, a lot of citizens, a large population center, you know, there's open parking, there's parking garages, parking decks, you know, multi-tier, which parking decks themselves are extremely robust, very thick concrete, very thick rebar, reinforced. But just, and of course those type of buildings, some of them will have bollards around them, and I've talked about those before. Those are those, like if you go to Target and they got the big round balls in the front by the entrance and doorways, big huge concrete planters, things like those. Yeah, they look nice, but they're actually there to keep vehicles from being able to get inside of the building or facility, or get close to it. It's a barrier, but they're fancy looking. Some places will have those. A lot of them won't, especially at hospitals, the emergency department. A lot of them, they'll have that covered breezeway where you can pull right up to the door, and then it's glass. So, even running, if they knew what hospital it was, and they still kept the hospital in operation, if there's, several hundred cars parked out there, that is a lot for a K9 to go through. It can be done. It can be done. So if you're watching this and you have bad intentions, it can be done. It's just a process. But anyways, followed by armed assaults and hostage taking. So they would set off that explosive device, vehicle-borne explosive device. And then after that, you have pure chaos going on, and then, armed assaults, probably something, maybe something similar to what happened in Israel, and, and then hostage taking. So the timing of this, the intelligence, they stated, suggests these attacks must occur before Al-Qaeda's planned aviation/DC attack, probably making the hospitals a prelude to a large-scale operation. We know from the past that these terrorist cells, terrorist groups, they don't talk about something one day and then 2 days later we're going to go do it. They spend a lot of time, a lot of years, months, planning these things, getting it all together. Typically it's just not some, hey, we're going to go do this and it happens next day. These things, they put a lot of time and effort into the planning of these things. So hospitals are soft targets. They're typically low security, high foot traffic, high vehicular traffic areas. And, hospitals are part of our critical infrastructure. Just the same as a power plant, water treatment facility, governmental buildings, things like that. But all of those will typically have a little bit better security. The governmental buildings will, at least. Power plants and water treatment, besides having a fence, some lights, and some cameras, maybe the occasional roaming security personnel, and yeah, hospitals for the most part do have security, a lot of unarmed security, and some armed security. Some may have will have their actual own police departments. But still, a lot of those campuses and facilities are quite large, and it's like any type of jurisdiction, whether it be city or county or whatever. A lot of ground to cover and very few people. The security sector, I would assume, is probably very similar to law enforcement at this point in time. Low morale, and a very small amount of people wanting to get into that profession. So, even with armed security, even if you have a medium campus hospital, what are you going to have? A couple, 4 or 5, armed security officers, and then probably some unarmed, which they're not going to be able to do squat, besides get on the radio or on the phone and call in some information. So, they're soft targets, and there's most of our our infrastructure in the United States is soft for the most part. Hospitals, water treatment, electrical grid facilities, your off-site power substations, schools, especially schools. You may have, one SRO, school resource officer, or campus security or something like that, but it's pretty soft. Even if you have one SRO or security officer at a school, they're still very soft. A lot of times it's, hundreds, up to 1,000, 1,500 students, very large campus and one armed, officer there. It's very soft, just like malls and shopping centers and things like that. The source for this information came through chatter from ISAC training camps in Afghanistan. Confirms that the operational planning is advanced. So, I'd seen that this planning was pretty much complete. It may not be 100% complete, but if it isn't complete, it's probably right about at that point. Then their reports indicate there's possible pre-attack surveillance in hospitals. And I had seen that a couple days ago, that there had been some reports of suspicious individuals or groups conducting surveillance on hospitals and those type of facilities. And detecting that now has become, years ago, it was easy. You went out, and if you were at a hospital governmental building, you saw someone hanging around, videotaping, taking pictures, the exterior of the facility. I'm not going to get into huge details of, the areas to look for that type of information. I did go through a school a handful of years ago with Homeland Security, and we actually went out to a very large area that was a soft target, and we went out there and nobody knew we were there. This group of us didn't know we were there. The only person that knew we were there was the manager of the entire facility. Security and all those other people didn't know we went. We went up there in POVs, which is personal owned vehicles, and we knew what we were going to do, and we went up there and we did all types of mess, videos and pictures and diagrams, just all types of stuff. Went all over the went all over the facility, and it was amazing. Where we were able to go and the information we were able to get, and then we had to come back and actually make a plan of how we would attack that facility. And it was pretty eye-opening. Pretty eye-opening what we were able to do going through this school and the information we were able to gather at this location. But it's harder now because you have something called First Amendment auditors, and their whole prerogative is to go through and videotape everybody and anything they can see in public. Law enforcement, governmental workers, post office, private facilities, hospitals, just all this different type of stuff. And they go in there with handheld camcorders and cameras and GoPros and, body cameras and all this thing. And they go in there and videotape under the prelude of, it's my First Amendment right to videotape anything I can see in public. And yes, that is correct. That is your right to, go videotape and do these things. But they push it way far to an extent to where people have dealt with them so much and got wrapped up in lawsuits and court cases and all this stuff that now, it's kind of become normal to see people wandering around these places. Typically, you wouldn't see people filming and videotaping. And, it's kind of become normalized to where some years ago it was not normal to see somebody videotaping and taking pictures, specific places and locations and things like that. So it has become a little harder. That just means security and law enforcement, and me now as a private citizen, to pay attention to what's going on, and keep your eyes open and pay attention to these different types of things. So since January 2nd to March 18th, there have been, from what I've seen, 9 different incidences at hospitals. And all of those range from ransomware attacks, data breaches, gunfire incidences, and fires. Of course, there was a good bit of the ransomware attacks, which that's happening all over a lot of the sectors, private and governmental sectors. Data breaches, gunfire, and actual fire itself. Those incidences at hospitals have picked up. So, as I stated, the American Hospital Association and the Health-ISAC sent out a threat bulletin on the 18th, and they stated on their website, they sent it out because of that X post, and they put that out as an abundance of caution. They didn't want to be caught with their pants down if something happened, and this information was out there, so they pushed it out to the hospitals and healthcare sector, so they could be informed. Now, are these hospitals and the health sectors and even, groups that aren't in the healthcare sector, are they going to pay attention to this? Are they going to boost their security presence? Are they going to pay more attention? Are they going to conduct red pill, intrusion training, which, if you don't know, red pill, intrusion training, that's pretty much what it is. A lot of times they'll just call it red pill. Pretty much you'll send a group in, pretty much what we did when I was in training. You send a group in to see how much information they can gather, what they can do, where they can go, if they can get into, authorized access only points, what can they do without being noticed or somebody coming up to them and confronting them. That has been suggested that they carry out that and boost their security, physical security presence, start reviewing CCTV footage, and really pay attention to what's going on. So I've talked about this before, but the Shawn Ryan Show, they just posted episode number 184. Episode 184. It's called "The Growing Threat to Christian Persecution in Syria and Homeland Attacks and How to Prepare." It's a very long episode. It's several hours long. Sarah Adams Superbad, she's on there, along with 2 other individuals. And this episode was it was awesome. They really delve into homeland attacks and how to prepare and things to do and things to look out for. Go and watch that episode. He has guests on there that are, spent their entire professional careers dealing with this type of information. I'm no professional. I've been to some schools. I pay attention to news and, alternative, news sources and some open source intelligence stuff. And, I pay attention to it, and I tell my family and friends about it, telling you all about it. These people know a lot of what's going on. So go over to the Shawn Ryan Show, episode 184, "The Growing Threat to Christian Persecution in Syria," which is, it's crazy. That's not even talked about on the mainstream media, how the Christian population in a lot of areas is being decimated. It's just they're being captured and tortured and killed. And, if you know a little bit about the Bible, these are things that are talked about in the Bible, the persecution for our beliefs, our Christian identity. So you need to know about that too. but also the homeland attacks and how to prepare. I think I'm gonna jump in and do another video maybe later today or tomorrow and get it, maybe push it out tomorrow, on what I had set up in my patrol car. I keep it in my personal vehicle now, along with a lot of other stuff, and I'm gonna make a video on that one day. I just got a new vehicle, so I'm trying to figure out how to get all that stuff set up. But I have what I used to call an active shooter bag, but it would be deployed for something like this too. But I'm gonna go through that bag too. But go through and watch that show. It'll give you some definite knowledge and information to think about, help you prepare, and with this information I gave you, like I said, don't be afraid, don't be scared. Do not let terrorism take over. Excuse me, take over your life. Go about your life, but be prepared. Pay attention. Use common sense and use situational awareness. Go to my Instagram, pull up that information I put. I'm gonna do a video on that again one day and put it up here for you all that follow me here and not there. But look into this. It's great information. I also like to ask you one other thing. I've posted this before. I'm trying to build this channel up. It's hard. I'm not that great with technology and all this different type of stuff I got going on, even though it's very basic stuff. I want to move into getting some better equipment eventually, but I've got to build my numbers up. I want to get into doing some affiliate marketing with some companies that I utilize their products. I like their products. I trust their products. But I've got to boost my numbers up before I can really jump into that. So if you would please, like, share, subscribe, and comment. It would help me out a lot. It's free to you. Only take you a second to do it. And, I would greatly appreciate it. But with that, a little bit out the way, stay safe, have a great day, and Minuteman out.